Breathing styles and training, Seiji's POV. Here's an interesting fact about the future Flame Hashira. Did you know that he learned his breathing style mostly through the diary and manuals left behind by the previous Flame Hashiras? It shocked me at first because I thought he would at least get some training from his father, but no, other than a few guidances and a beatdown where he told his son how pointless his training was, the father was a useless bum. Don't let him catch me saying that though. He still had deep respect for his father and wouldn't allow anyone to badmouth him. He admired his father for all he had done, and Rengoku did not blame him for how he turned out to be. A profession like his could really break any man, my friend said. His father had been strong for long enough. He had saved enough lives. Now it was his turn to do so, it was his turn to carry his father's burden. That's what he told me. Anyway, let's shift the topic to more interesting matters. Breathing styles, just like Rengoku said, I had been going horrendously wrong this whole time. It was no wonder I wasn't able to use it properly, much less complete my own breathing style. The problem lay in my simplistic thought and lack of creativity. I was too caught up on logic and what I remembered from the show. You take in huge amounts of air and increase the amount of oxygen in your blood so that your muscles have a boost in energy and performance. I lived by that statement and it was wrong. I am not sure how I could compare it, but let me try it this way. Imagine a breath could be any number and my capacity for one breath was 10. So I go, 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10 is equal to 50. I took in as much air as possible and forced my body to absorb all the oxygen it could get. But that was a primitive way of doing it. I learned that using unique breathing patterns and correct forms could have huge effects in the way my body got enhanced. So I could go like, 10 times 5 is equal to 50 using a proper pattern, and knowing exactly what I wanted to achieve allowed me to increase the efficiency of my breaths many times over. What took 5 huge breaths could be achieved using 2 if proper technique was applied. Then there were many other things that could be taken into account as well. There were proper ways to exhale and the way you matched your breaths with your heartbeat. And posture could have a significant impact. Take the negative number as an exhalation. 10x 9 plus 10 is equal to 100. It's all about the patterns. And just like how you could have a positive effect, if you did an incorrect form and pattern, you could have a negative effect. 9 plus 10 times 0 plus 5 is equal to 5. I hope this comparison made sense as it was the most simplistic way I could explain. In conclusion, breathing style was not about your lung capacity, it never was, it was all about forms and the pattern with which you breathe. When I learned this, I almost leapt up and started dancing in joy, because if there was anything I was good at, it was learning and observing the pattern of things. After all, breathing styles were also a movement, all under the language of the body. Stop it, that's enough. I said to Rengoku, who had a giant boulder on his back while he did push-ups. You are only breaking your body. Rengoku was a training freak. His training was so intense that it almost scared me when I first saw it. It was scary for me because I could see in detail how his body was working and tearing apart with each set of training he endured. I had never seen anyone training so hard and barbaric before. It reminded me of Might Guy from Naruto. In fact, I believe they were the same person in different universes. Instead of shouting, "Youth!" Rengoku yelled, "Set your heart aballs," while breaking his body and forging it like a sword. That is the whole point, Seiji. How about you come join me instead? Let me show you everything is possible if you put your mind to it. He said. No. I was not going to endure such hellish training for literally no gain. I could see how my muscles work and I trained just enough to simulate them and then allow them time to grow so that I could make the most progress at a period of time. What Rengoku did was actually counterproductive. He was overtraining himself, and in terms of increasing muscle power and building the body, he was cutting his own gains. I tried to tell him this multiple times, but he did not listen. In the end, we just came to a mutual agreement that we had different type of training styles. I utilized my gifts to get the most progress out of training, but he was using his determination to not only sharpen his body but his mind as well. Each of our styles had its pros and cons. Looking objectively, my training style was superior and I made maximum progress. But on the other hand, Rengoku was not only training his body but also the endurance of his mind. It was because of his freakishly intense training that he was able to go beyond his limits and achieve the impossible when it was needed. Like it was the case when he was fighting Akaza. In the end, it was just a matter of choice. Which one would you prefer? This reminded me of the scientific training versus ego lifting in the gym. Which one was a better method? By the way, this did not mean I was not training hard by any means. I was training as hard as my body could handle, but Rengoku was just another level. He was a freak. And I believe he would get stronger his own way. Who am I to try and stop him when I clearly knew that he would grow stronger? 100. Rengoku yelled, and then he stood up with raised hands. I cringed when I saw the muscle tear on his tricep and chest muscles. That would take at least 2 weeks to heal properly, but he would probably train again the day after tomorrow. I guess we are persisting through sheer shounen power with this one. Seiji. Let us go for a run around the mountain, he said, and I released a sigh. I shook my head and relented. I guess I could go for a run. A few minutes later I had to struggle to catch up with him. He said let's run around the mountain, but what he meant was, let us sprint as fast as we could around the mountain. Fucking freakish bastard. We trained like that for a week. We would spar against each other whenever we had time, with the victor always being me. But the thing about winning against Rengoku was that he never even went close to going all out. His body just couldn't go full power on someone he held close. I learned flame breathing with Rengoku as well, and he was even kind enough to let me read the manuals of the previous flame Hashiras. I managed to learn all of the forms in a week. I made huge progress, especially when Rengoku was always willing to demonstrate them for me, and my eyes saw everything, so it made it easier to learn them. Although I was far from mastering them, I think it boosted my overall combat power many times. We would hunt demons during the night as well, and it became a lovely bonding time between us. It was times we spent under the moon that I would remember forever. Then a week passed and it was finally upon us. The final selection. The final selection, Seiji's POV, beautiful. The world was beautiful. But demons corrupted this world. Their ugly existence and evil hearts were a stain on this beautiful world. Such beauty did not deserve filth. So I shall drive them to extinction. I would rid the world of its blemish. And I would start from this mountain. Such was my thought process as I climbed up the trail and steps of Mount Fujikaisen. The mountain was covered with beautiful wisteria trees from the base till halfway up the mountain. The flowers released a beautiful glow of pink, purple, and lavender, and it felt like I was in a different realm entirely. There were wisteria trees at the base, but halfway was where they were most plentiful. The place was so bright. It was brighter than day. The wisteria flowers released a sweet scent that made the simple act of breathing an enjoyable experience. They were soft when you touched them, and their beauty made you hesitant to even blink. It was a feast to all the senses. I wished I had working ears, because I was sure they would make such soothing sounds when the winds blew on them. Ha 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 ha, Seiji, you look drunk. Rengoku tapped my shoulder and said. Yes, my friend, I was drunk. Drunk from beauty. My eyes felt like they were having an orgasm just looking at the beautiful scenery. No joke, it was squirting tears. The steps were covered with a thin layer of algae, yet it was extremely clean and maintained. Red pillars with kanji words written on them stood at the edge of the steps and gave a unique Japanese vibe. In conclusion, I was going to attend the final selection every year. At last, we reached halfway up the mountain and there was a small clearing there with a platform. Rengoku and I were the first ones to reach the place, so we decided to stand under the biggest wisteria tree that also provided a perfect view of the whole compound. We waited as the other participants slowly made their way up the mountain. Rengoku and I judged everyone who came up the mountain. We gave our thoughts on which one of them was strong and which one had the potential to pass the final selection. I had my eyes to judge them, and Rengoku claimed that his gut feeling was never wrong. That one looks strong. Look at him, he is covered with scars. Clearly, his heart is burning with determination. He will definitely pass. Yeah, and it's not just scars. He has 3 of his fingers missing. He wouldn't be able to hold a sword properly. He fails. Look at that giant of a man. He looks strong. That's just his genetic. His tendons are weak and his muscles show a lack of proper development. Also, he is too fat. What about that guy? His eyes give me the chills. He's blind in the right eye. Look at that guy carrying a long sword. It's too long, he has to put it on his back. He looks like he knows how to fight properly. That might be true. His muscles are certainly developed in the perfect way, that tells me at least he knows how to swing. He might pass. Oh. I know that mask. He is a disciple of Urokadaki, the retired water Hashira. They all have that distinctive mask. He's dead. What? Why? Don't ask. Oh, that girl has inverted nipples. That's rare. Seiji. Oops, did I say that out loud? In a few hours, the small compound was filled with young warriors who wished to become demon slayers. They all had that look in their eyes, like a student who were about to face the final exams. Most of them were looking at each other like they were enemies, and that was not a good thing. We were not going to compete with each other for the final selection. Instead, it would be about survival, and you might need to work together. It would not do you good to glare at everyone. After all participants had gathered, a lady with white hair guarded by 2 demon slayers walked towards the platform and stood on it. Good evening, everyone. The lady with white hair started, and everyone turned towards her. My name is Lady Amain Ubuyashiki. Welcome participants, to the Demon Slayer Corps final selection, she said. Holy shit, it really is her. The badass wife who did not tremble in front of the Demon King, aka the perfect wife. God, she was beautiful. Her beauty stood out even in the garden of beautiful wisteria flowers. Let us not waste time and get straight to the point. Here in Mount Fujikasen, there are several demons that were captured alive by demon slayers. They are kept there for this event, and the wisteria flowers prevent them from leaving the mountain. She said. They bloom on this mountain each year round, and they cover everything from the base to halfway to the top. But the wisteria ends here, she said, and signaled behind her, which no longer had wisteria. There are demons beyond this point, and they are very hungry. For the final selection, you must survive for 7 days beyond the wisteria's protection. Good luck, everyone. Your trial begins here. After she said what was needed, she left the platform immediately and left us to go beyond the safe point. Hey Rengoku, what did her voice sound like? I asked. Huh? She sounded normal to me. Although some might say her voice was quite stoic, he said with a shrug. Then we were all separated into a few groups. These groups would go up the mountain from different locations. Rengoku and I had to separate. Good luck, Seiji, see you in 7 days. Rengoku said with a smile that outshined the glowing flowers for a good second. Of course. Be sure you don't hurt yourself trying to save a stranger, everyone who came here is prepared to die. I said, because I knew he was strong enough to easily pass this test. The only way he could get hurt was if he tried to act like a hero and save everyone as Sabito did. We can do anything we want, even the impossible, as long as we believe in it, he said, and then his smile turned wider. So I can save everyone without getting hurt. I'll just have to kill every demon then. I said with a smile, and we separated. I was amongst a group of 10 people, and we went up the mountain from the west side. The atmosphere immediately turned gloomy, and a sense of danger prickled my skin when I left the protection of the wisteria trees. This should be fun. I said, and my eyes glowed in the new darkness void of wisteria light. I could see the demons ahead, and they were sharpening their teeth. Let the final selection begin. Hand Demon, Seiji's POV, let the final selection begin. But first, I needed a sword. I only had a normal katana with me, but I required a Nichiren blade if I wanted to pass this trial. So I did what every rational person would do. I looked around for someone to rob. My eyes did a quick scan of the people in my vicinity, and I locked on the weakest of the bunch. It was a thin young man who seemed to be around 20 or so. His body told me that he barely trained, and from the slight shiver of his legs, he was afraid. I didn't know why he even attended the final selection, but he was doomed to die here. So I did him a favor and walked up to him before chopping his neck, effectively knocking him out. "You can try again next year if you are truly determined," I said while dragging his body down the mountain and back to the protection of the wisteria. I pulled out his Nichiren blade and inspected it for a bit. It was in good condition other than a small chip here and there. "This will do." The other participants who saw what happened chose to shut up and stay away from me. I took the blade and started climbing up the mountain with the rest of the group. It did not take long to encounter demons, as the place was infested with these vile creatures. 3 demons appeared in front of me. One came up to me with a confident stride and a wicked grin on his face, another was on top of a tree, and another suddenly leapt at me from the side bush. It was a roughly planned ambush, but from the wicked smile on their faces, I could tell that it had always worked out in their favor so far. Why fight a participant by yourself and risk dying when you could overwhelm one of them 3-1? It was less risky, and they would share equally with each other. Demons were intelligent creatures. That was what made them all the more disgusting. They were able to strategize, and they knew exactly what they were doing. I spun the Nichiren blade in my hand, and even without sparing a glance, I cut off the head of the demon who leapt at me. There was a pause while the demon fell to the ground with a thud and his body quickly disintegrated. The atmosphere changed in an instant, and the demon felt that maybe it was not such a good idea to target me. Meanwhile, I looked at the sword in my hands. It was effective, but in my mind, it was too effective. The demons died too easily. It felt like they did not suffer at all while I ended their filthy existence. I could understand now why Shinobu would prefer using poison to kill demons. It was not satisfying at all. I shook my head, putting aside the unhealthy thought. Let's just assume they have a sad backstory so that I wouldn't be so pissed about their easy deaths. I looked at the 2 remaining demons and realized they were talking to me. "I'm going to enjoy ripping out your insides," and I stopped reading their lips just then. I preferred silence to nonsense. I shot towards the demon, and before he could even react, I cut both of his legs and appeared behind him. He released a guttural scream that I could feel from the vibration alone. I changed the grip on my sword and then swung the Nichiren blade up so that it went between his legs, and I cleanly sliced him in half. I could get creative with my kills to make it more satisfying. The demon on the tree immediately turned around and started running away, but my eyes never lost him. I smiled when I saw the desperation on his face. It was the face of someone who realized they fucked up. I sprinted through the forest and followed the demon in silence. I made sure to hide my presence, and I avoided leaves and twigs to remain unnoticed. After running several meters away, the demon finally came to a stop and jumped down on the ground. He was a demon, yet his chest rose and fell like he was tired. I picked up a rock and threw it in the opposite direction. The sound immediately caught his senses, and he looked towards the sound with a spooked face. I closed the distance between us while he turned away, and then I stood right behind him. He froze. He sensed my presence behind him. I did not kill him just yet, as I let him suffer in fear and terror. There was sweat dripping down the side of his face, and after several seconds, he slowly turned his head back to look at me. That was when I ran my blade right through his neck. My eyes captured every detail of his fearful face, and his head fell to the ground before quickly turning into ash. The night was still young, and I still had 7 more days to go. How delightful. I started moving through the forest again in search of other demons. They must have enjoyed the final selection, as it was the time of the year when they could hunt humans. In fact, I was sure it was a much anticipated event for the demons in this mountain. But not this time. During this 1 week, I would show the demons what it felt like to be the victim. What was the trial again? Survive in the mountain full of demons for 7 days? Let's rephrase that. Try and survive me for 7 days, you foul creatures. 2 days later, I moved through the forest non-stop during the night and slept during the day. The mountain of Fujikasane was vast, and with the frequent demon attacks, I had not covered the whole place even once, but tonight, things were quite different. I had not encountered even a single demon as they learned to run away from me. They could not even think about trying to hunt for participants as they ran from me. Demons had great senses, so I could not do much when they were actively trying to avoid me. I wondered how Rengoku was doing. Strangely enough, I haven't met him during these past 2 days, and I wouldn't say I was worried, but it would bring me much relief to see him. I walked through the forest at my own pace, but I was brought to a halt when I saw blood all over one specific clearing. My eyes analyzed the broken terrain and the blood. I could somehow recreate what happened here in my mind from the clues. I turned to my right and then saw broken trees and displaced bushes, which clearly indicated that something big walked through that path. The blood also followed the trail, so I decided to investigate. A couple of minutes walk later, my eyes finally caught the demon who caused all of it. The smell of rotting corpses filled the air, but I did not even show a reaction due to what my eyes were seeing. A gigantic demon the color of green vomit sat down in a clearing that he made. His appearance could only be described as an abomination, with many hands protecting his neck and acting like a scarf and many other arms protruding out of his body. But what really caught my attention was the dozen of dead corpses that lay in front of him. I watched as he picked up one of the dead participants and slowly tore off the clothes. Then one of his hands enlarged and ripped off the core's head. He peeled back the head to completely rip out the spine as blood spurted out non-stop. The demon then threw away the head connected with the spine before he opened his wide jaws and ate the human in 3 bites. The demon was having a meal. And from the way he was savoring the taste of the humans, he was having a very peaceful meal. I walked out of the forest and came out to the clearing he had made to have a meal. His head immediately turned towards me and I could see him shake and chuckle. Another one just delivered himself to me, how convenient. I was going to kill him. Sorry Tanjiro and whatever plot this world had, but I would not allow this creature to live for even a second longer. Rest in peace, Seiji's POV, what do you think you're looking at, brat? I don't like your eyes, they give me the creeps, the hand demon said with a mock shiver. It was a little tricky to read his lips since, well, he didn't have one. But I was able to decipher what he was saying from the vibrations and the movement of his giant throat. His form was an abomination, it was ugly put together. Its grotesque physical features felt like a psychopath created something even he would find revolting. What a bad day to have eyes. The scent of 2-day-old corpses mixed with the stench of the demon made me want to puke. For the first time, I regretted training the sensitivity of my other senses. I hate it. I hate him. Not answering. Well, that's just fine, the hand demon said, and the arms around his body moved. My eyes had some trouble keeping up with it because his body was so different from a human's. Muscles started forming out of nothing and bones snapped into unpredictable directions, and the blood flow was also unnatural. It did not feel like I was looking at a living thing, it felt like I was looking at water. For the first time in a while, I could not read body language. Fighting was not a conversation. Actions talked, but it was gibberish. I guess I finally found a new weakness I always had. It was demons like him with no concrete form and were in an ever-changing state. I will make you scream, the demon yelled, and then 5 hands shot towards me at ridiculous speed. My eyes widened, and my brain tried to make sense of the hands that were somehow reaching out to me. They were still connected to the same body, but they were elongating at incredible speed. Nevertheless, the world was still moving in slow motion for me. I reacted quickly, without wasting a single movement. I spun the blade in my hand, and with the swiftness of the wind, I cut all of his hands in different joining angles. That was not the end though, from where I cut one hand, 2 took its place and they reached out to me. I was forced to move away, so I rolled to the side and ran away as the hands followed me. They were incredibly fast. I could see how the demon was controlling the hands and forcing them to push forward, but it did not make sense. I conclude that it was his blood demon arts, something along the lines of flesh manipulation. I placed one foot on the ground and turned towards the incoming hands. I counted 13. I took a deep breath and used my own breathing to enhance my physical stats. Learning from what happened before, the demon did not reach for me blindly. Instead, his arms became whips, without bones, and they lashed at me from all directions. But my enhanced body was more than capable of matching his speed, so I parried the flurry of attacks that came my way. My arm became an afterimage as I parried 50 attacks in 5 seconds. "You are strong, but not strong enough," the hand demon yelled. I was deaf, yet the sharp gust of wind that came from his shout sent a tingle down my spine. The hands morphed into one giant hand that was able to cast a shadow over my entire body. I leapt back and the hand slammed on my previous position, leaving a hand crater where I once stood. Then the hand demon tried to be sneaky by sending his hands underground. I could see his barely hidden grin as the hand finally reached right under me. They popped out from the ground, trying to grab my feet, but such attempts were honestly pathetic to my eyes. I did a backflip and cut the hands with ease. "Huh. You saw that coming." "That's new," the hand demon said. My feet landed on the ground and I straightened my back and took a bold stance. I was afraid of many things. But an ugly piece of shit like him was not one of them. "You got some pretty tricks up your sleeve, and you look young." His eyes turned into slits, like the eyes of a playful cat. "You have a bright future as a demon slayer. This will make it all the more satisfying," he screamed, and he turned himself into a ball. His hands wrapped tightly around his body. More arms started growing from his body and wrapped around him until he became a sphere like a ball. "That's new," I said. "I didn't know he could do that." Then he rolled towards me at incredible speed. His body was huge, so I had to push myself off the ground with all my strength. I jumped above his rolling body, dodging him. A hand shot out from his rolling body, but I saw it. I swiftly cut it off before it reached me. His body rolled into the forest and felled any trees that were on his way. The ground shook and a trail of dirt was left behind in the wake of his unorthodox attack. "You can't run no more," he screamed, and then he rolled towards me again. He had gained enough momentum and he was even faster than before. My eyes released a purple glow while I analyzed his body. I learned the pattern of his rotation, and in a split second, I calculated where and when he would leave an opening. A scene of the future played in my mind, and I was able to cut off his head in one clean strike. I acted on that future. I gripped the sword in my hand. It was getting brittle and would surely break if I did not land a clean slice. I took in huge gusts of air from my mouth and they turned into flames. I felt my body heat up. Here's a thing about learning breathing style with eyes like mine. After you learn each form, you become familiar with them like you would with words. After learning the meaning of a word, you can use it in different sentences. Similarly, after you learn the concept of one form, you could apply it in different attacks. Flame breathing, esoteric art, first form. My legs pushed me off like a bullet. Unerring fire. The timing was impeccable. My eyes and my perfect movement allowed me to slice the demon right when his head was on top while he was still rolling rapidly. The top of the ball, his head, was neatly chopped off. A trail of fire followed my perfect movement to create a mesmerizing display of light. The demon's body immediately lost strength and it stopped contracting into a ball. His head fell on the ground with a thud, eyes widening to the limit in shock while he watched his own body stumbling into a pitiful fall. "What happened?" he asked himself, his final words. I released a long breath and I watched the Nisaran blade break into pieces after my attack. I figured the old sword was not going to hold on for long, especially after executing my own technique. Esoteric art, it literally means secret or unique art. A breathing user was able to accomplish such arts after fully mastering Their breathing style. They created their own forms or versions of an attack. Rengoku's flame-breathing 9th form and Ju water-breathing 11th form was such an example. However, I was able to shortcut that and create my own different forms of a breathing style after learning just one. I was just special like that. The flame-breathing 1st form, Unknowing Fire, was an attack in which the user dashes towards the enemy and delivers a horizontal slash at the enemy from a blind spot. It required great timing and situational awareness to attack the enemy's blind spot. My own version of it, Esoteric Art 1st form, Unerring Fire, was just that but even more deadly as I predicted the future with my eyes and then I attacked based on that future with impeccable timing. The perfect movement also helped me achieve this as there was literally not even a millimeter of mistake in my attack. I attacked at the right place, at the right time, without flaw. It was certain death. I threw away the sword hilt on my hand and relaxed my body. The aftermath of an adrenaline dump was always exhausting. I stood in my place for a minute before I walked to the dozen corpses the hand demon had stored for his meal that I swiftly checked their body and took their Nichiren blade off their dead bodies. Then I spent the rest of the night digging a hole to bury their bodies. By sunrise, I was able to bury all of them and after holding a short funeral and giving respect, I left the barren clearing. I hoped they rest in peace, knowing that I had avenged their death. A demon slayer, Seiji's POV, the rest of the trial went by pretty easily as the hand demon was probably the strongest demon on the mountain. It was just a test, the final selection, so of course the demons on the mountain were not that strong. I learned that I was too overqualified for this trial. Which was to be expected as even Tanjiro did not have such a hard time with it and he only trained for 2 years while I trained for 7. But I did not fuck around for a week. Instead, I actually made use of the test and all of the training opportunities that it presented. A demon's body was hard to read compared to a human's. This could not be any clearer from my fight with the hand demon. The history of a man was etched into his body. You could tell what kind of movements he had done most through his muscle constitution, which in turn tells you what his job was. Farmers had strong backs and forearms, smiths had large shoulders and triceps, artists had long nimble fingers and unique tendons, etc. Even in the case of a swordsman, you could tell a lot of things such as how strong he was, which was his dominant hand, his weakness, etc. But demons were a little trickier than humans with their regenerative abilities and the way they could simply get stronger by eating humans. Then again, there were demons whose bodies surprisingly told me that they trained, but these demons were 1 in 100. So I utilized the opportunity to learn more about demons and their bodies. I looked upon Yorichi as an example. He too was born with the transparent world and it was his deep understanding of the human body that gave birth to breathing styles. He was also able to develop sun-breathing forms made to kill Muzan by seeing his weakness. This kind of research, acquiring a deeper understanding of my own body and my enemies, was just as important as your standard training. Other than learning about the demon's body, I also learned a lot about their behavior and habits this week. Specifically, I learned how to hunt demons when they were doing everything to avoid me and how to find their hiding spot during the day. Here's a fun fact, most demons usually have a cave or a shady place where they would hide during the day. But there were also many demons who had no such places or could not reach them in time. What did these demons do? Well, apparently they buried themselves underground. Like this dude. I said while looking at the freshly dug and closed soil. I put a little focus on my eyes and I was able to see through the ground. Lo and behold, a demon was sleeping underground like a corpse. Sometimes, they would even dig out whole tunnels to stay away from the sunlight. I took out my Nichiren blade and stabbed the ground. He was buried very shallow, so my blade was able to pierce him right at his throat. His body soon disintegrated, and he died even without realizing it. I eventually stumbled upon Rengoku as well on the 6th day. We decided to stick together from then on and we hunted the demons together. On the last night of the final selection, we did not even have to hunt demons as most of them were annihilated and the survivors hid very well and refused to ever surface again even during the night. And just like that, the trial came to an end. I passed. With flying colors, might I add. Welcome back to all the remaining participants and congratulations to all of you. I am glad to see you are safe. Lady Amain said while the sun slowly rose on the horizon. The final selection had ended, and other than Rengoku and I, there were a total of 12 more participants who were able to survive through the week. The number surprised me quite a bit, as I remembered only 6 or so people passed when Tanjiro took the test. But then when I thought about it, it made sense that there were more survivors, considering I went on a demon-killing spree. From today onwards, all of you are officially demon slayers. First of all, we will all issue uniforms for you, so we must take your measurements. So please, be patient with us and stay put. Secondly, all of you will have your rank engraved on the back of your hand. I'm sure most of you are not familiar with the Demon Slayer ranking, so let me explain. Lady Amain said, and she went on to explain how the ranking works and what must be done to reach each rank. The rank goes like this: 1. Kino 2. Kinoto 3. Hino 4. Hinoto 5. Tsukino 6. Tsukinoto 7. Kano 8. Kanoto 9. Mizuno 10. Mizunoto. All of us were assigned the rank of Mizunoto, and we would have to climb up the ranks from there. There were also the Hashiras, or pillars as they called them, but those were said to be impossible to achieve for most people. Well, not for me though. Ha 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 ha, I would be sure to reach the rank of Hashira and take my father's duty upon my shoulder. And him too. Now on to the next topic. Lady Amain said, and she clapped her hand. Her action made me alert and focused, so I was able to see the disturbance in the air. I followed it and turned around. I saw 13 crows flying towards us, and they all flew down to each of the participants. Except me. A bird did fly near me, but it was not a crow. Instead, it was a strange sparrow with the color combination of red, white and black. There was also a notable feature about it that immediately attracted me. It was the absolutely dead eyes. They looked like the eyes of a dead fish, and the bird radiates a lot of attitude. I turned to Rengoku, who had a normal crow on his shoulder. He had his usual radiant smile on his face while he told the bird he was looking forward to working together with him. Hey, I think mine is broken, I said while pointing at the sparrow that was flying just above my head. Rengoku gave me a look before he bursted out laughing. He said, "It fits you." If I didn't know he was so nice, I would take that as an insult. I finally offered a hand to the bird, but instead of perching on it like a normal bird, it sat on the palm of my hand like sitting on a nest. I spent a minute just staring at its dead eyes, expecting the sparrow to at least say something, but it was never-ending quiet. Fuck. Did they really give me a mute bird just because I was deaf? I mean, it won't really make a difference, but come on, how am I supposed to use him as a messenger? The fact that it was not a crow did not bother me, since I knew there were demon slayers with different birds as the messengers. Zenitsu also received a sparrow instead of a crow. But hey, at least give me a working one. Is that too much to ask? Wait, is this what discrimination feels like? These are your Kasugai crows. They will be your valued partner as a demon slayer and will act as messengers to facilitate communication. Lady Amain explained. I observed the other participants and their crows. Although I expected it to be tricky, it was not difficult to read the words coming from the crows. The throat contraction and tongue movement were almost the same as humans. So, what is your name? I asked and looked at my sparrow's dead eyes. You don't have a name. I replied, and that raised two issues. 1. My sparrow did not have a name. It was a she, and she was asking me to name her. 2. How the fuck was I able to communicate with her? I knew the world of Demon Slayer had many supernatural elements, with ghosts teaching the character and demons basically having magic spells, but I really wanted to know how I was able to understand her completely. She was staying so still, so maybe it was something about her eyes. Nope, they were as dead as ever. I shook my head and stopped thinking about it. Instead, I used my brain to come up with a name for her. How about I call you Crow? I said to the sparrow. She looked me dead in the eyes and said it was too lazy and she would not appreciate being associated with her annoying colleagues. Raven then. I said. It was close to what she was, which was a Kasugia crow, and her dead eyes and attitude reminded me of Raven from Teen Titans. From now on, you are Raven. I said, and she jumped on top of my head and made a nest on my hair. Now for the final task, all of you shall select an ore to create your Nichiren blades, often referred to as color-changing katanas, she said. It will take anywhere from 1015 days for your blades to be ready, but you shall choose the ore now. The workers living in the mountains came out and brought different ores with them. The participants were made to select their preferred ores one by one. When it was finally my turn, I raised a question. Lady Amain, will it be possible to write a letter to my smith so that they can make a few changes on my blade? I asked. Lady Amain nodded, that will be possible. Just make sure you do not ask something outrageous. I said thank you and then proceeded to pick the biggest ore in the pile because what I was about to request would undoubtedly take a bigger ore than others. You may all leave the mountain as official demon slayers. Lady Amain said after everything was done. And that day, at the age of 13 years and 10 months, I became a demon slayer. The Wandering Swordsman author. It's Saturday, literally the worst day of the week for faithful readers because most authors took break today as well, making it so that there are barely any updates of books. So here is a long chapter to make up for it. Seiji's POV. After the end of the final selection, Rengoku and I had to part ways. He had a home to return to and a father who was awaiting for his return. He seemed enthusiastic about breaking the news to his father. He left the same day the trial ended and I was left to my lonesome self, again. You truly feel the value of someone's presence in their absence. Rengoku was loud, so it was too silent when he left. Which was strange coming from a deaf. I contemplated what to do for the next 10 days. I could return to my own home, but that felt like a bad idea when my house was around 14 days away. I did not have any relatives nor a friend whom I could visit. Heck, I did not have a sensei who trained me to become a demon slayer, or else I would have ran to him for an embrace and pretend like I accomplished something significant. In the end, it was just me and Raven who, by the way, had decided to make my hair her permanent nest. Luckily she was smart enough to be not shit and stuff on my head. I will shave my head if you get too annoying, I said while walking along the path that led to somewhere I did not care enough to know. Raven gently tapped on my head and said I would never shave my head because I cared too much about my looks. It was true. As I said before, I like beautiful things and I wouldn't like myself if I were not beautiful. And I did not mean that on a genetic level but on how I maintain my looks. I was always clean and neatly trimmed. I wouldn't like it even if the tiniest hair was out of order in my body or the smallest blemish marked my clothes. All of which might seem redundant to most but not for me and my eyes. I was also quite picky with how I dressed, preferring to wear things that suited me. Whatever I wore must be neat and tidy and fit me perfectly. I was also called a poor fashion enthusiast in my past life. So yes, I would never shave my head because I looked better with wavy exotic purple hair. Where are we going? Raven asked by tapping her small feet on my head. Nowhere. I said, we are going to roam around the mountains and forests like a ronin while waiting for my first mission and Nichiren blade. And of course, we will also kill any demons we encounter. I said, continuing my journey. Now a question might pop into your head. How could I communicate with Raven? The answer was Morse code. I learned Morse code way back in my past life and in this life as well. When I was facing the examination of Chigako, which I took out of necessity for my inheritance, I actually chose Morse code as a substitute for Viva Voice, which was an exam I was not able to take due to being deaf. It was a special privilege to select any subject of my liking in place of Viva Voice due to my disability. When I first met Raven, she sat on my palm and communicated through Morse code. I did not realize it at first but I quickly caught on it later. So yes, it had nothing to do with her eyes or her being a psychic. I was kind of surprised the Demon Corp thought that far ahead. They not only selected a bird that would be able to communicate with me, but they also knew informations about me, like the fact that I knew Morse code and took it as a subject in my exams. When I asked Raven about it, she said it was only a natural reaction. I was quite famous in Japan as a prodigious kendo master, so when the master heard I was going to become a demon salyer, he took special consideration for me. The same goes for promising demon slayers recommended by Hashiras or retired Hashiras. What else could I say? I was impressed with Ubuyashiki. I spent days roaming around the mountains, sleeping during the day and traveling during the night like the demons I was hunting. There was this universal rule about not finding something when you were actively searching for it. The same went for demons. When you searched for them you couldn't find them, yet when you were most vulnerable and did not want to encounter a demon, you found them. I was only able to slay a total of 5 demons in the span of 10 days. 3 of them I encountered in the mountains, but I found the other 2 terrorizing a village and I slayed them while I stayed in said village. There was nothing notable to say about these demons. They were strong for sure, likely in the same level as the hand demon, but they were not strong to me. And they were not tricky to fight like the hand demon was. The 2 of them who had blood demon art had very basic powers like the ability to grow blades in their body and hair that could turn into sharp tentacles. Nothing I couldn't handle. But it was the 6th demon that was somewhat remarkable because he was able to completely hide his presence, and I also learned in this encounter the true value of my bird companion. I did not have ears, and although I had sharp senses, they were limited. My eyesight was my greatest power and I could see everything in front of me, but that was also limited to my field of vision, 180 degrees. That meant I had a very wide blind spot behind me. I could tell when something was coming close to me by the movement of the air, but by then, it would usually be too late. But luckily, I had another pair of eyes on top of my head. _. It meant the letter D. But the way she tapped on my scalp told me everything I needed to know. D, danger. I pivoted on my heels and turned around just in time to pull out my katana and block the demon who tried to plunge his claws into my back and take out my heart. His claws met my blade and a bright spark lit up the darkness. With the alertness of a person close to death, I quickly redirected his hand and sliced at his neck. My movement was ever so perfect and swift even in times of panic. But a weird sight greeted me. My sword went right through his neck, but I didn't slice him. It was like cutting through a phantom. It was a blood demon art. I did not know how it worked, I was clueless, so the best action to take was running and making distance. That was what I did. I quickly leapt to the side and I swung 3 warning slashes to stop him from closing the distance. I stopped when I was around 5 meters away from him. You blocked that. The demon said and tilted his head in an odd mix of anger and confusion. No one has ever blocked that. I fear the day I have to be in an ugly competition with a demon. I would never win. Because what the fuck was that? Can you wait for me while I vomit? I said, my plain voice laced with disgust. I felt bile rising up my throat. In front of me stood a demon with crossed eyes with mucus in his eye sac. He had spiky hair, the color of sand, and he only wore an obi and a torn yukata that covered up to his knees. Putting aside the ugliness and the triggering asymmetrical shape of the demon, I analyzed him to determine his strength and blood demon art. It was not difficult to see him for what he was. All truths laid bare before my eyes. His body is intangible. I could tell this instantly because many indications point towards that. The first thing was that I could not see the inside of his body, and my X-ray vision failed. The air was phasing through his body, I could see it clearly with my eyes. There was also this weird aura surrounding his body which told me something was going on with him. His blood demon art was intangibility. That would explain the lack of sound in his steps and his non-existent smell. Both senses which I trained to make sure no one could sneak up on me from behind were meaningless to him. I don't like the way you are looking at me, human. Do you think you will survive just because you are a demon slayer? He asked, I got news for you. I have a thing for demon slayers' flesh and I have killed countless of them. He burst forward with incredible speed. He left cobweb cracks on the ground due to his powerful legs pushing him off. The air exploded out and so did he. The action was predicted but only at the last few seconds. The fact that I could not see inside of his body was clearly a disadvantage. But when he pushed off the ground, that was when his intangibly ended and his body became visible. I learned many things from that and he also told me many things about himself. He could become intangible but he could not attack while doing so. He also could not make parts of his body intangible, it was either all or nothing. He had 2 beating hearts in his chest, which was not uncommon for strong demons as it boosted their physical strength and made them a bit more durable to piercing. A peek at his muscles told me that he was exceptionally fast and was built for speed. But he lacked the sheer strength of most demons his caliber. Flame breathing, second form. My breath turned into flames and my sword left a trail of fire as I swung vertically upwards. It created a perfect arc that went up like the sun. Rising scorching Sunday. The demon's smile widened and he turned intangible. His movement became even bolder and he phased right through my attack and through me. I immediately turned around to see him shoot towards the forest. He landed horizontally on a tree before he launched himself at me again like a cannon. The branch of the tree was blown apart due to the sheer force. "You're dying," he screamed. I turned my blade sideways and threw a horizontal slash at him but just like before, he phased through my blade and right through my body. Ha 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 ha. He laughed like a hyena. He thought he had gotten to my head. He was infinitely amused seeing my attacks become void in front of his blood demon art. My lips curved too. This must be his usual strategy. Normal people could not differentiate when he was intangible or not, so he would attack multiple times from different angles like this. He constantly put the opponents on edge until he found openings he could take. Or better yet, he let his enemies tire themselves out. Humans were not like demons, exhaustion was a big issue for them. And it's not like they could ignore his bluff either since they couldn't tell if he was intangible and he was literally too fast to even get a thought across. And in the case that they let their guard down, thinking he was about to fake another attack, he would make them regret that by taking their head. It was a flawless strategy as the enemy would inevitably fall. Unless they're me. Because I had an advantage, I could tell exactly when he was going intangible and when he was real. He swiped his sharp claws at me and I barely had time to dodge it by moving to the side. The lack of air resistance made him move at extreme speed. I drew my sword and managed to cut his leg as he shot past me, but that was a minor injury for a demon like him. "Be careful, fighting me is not the time to be lost in thought," he said with glee before he sprang at me again. But this time, it was a fake attack. He bounced around the forest, destroying many trees in the process. He faked another 3 attacks which I pretended to respond to. Then he decided that he had a chance and he went for the kill. "Die," he screamed, "it was stupid to give out your location like that if you were truly to attack your enemy." Which was exactly why someone other than me would expect the demon to fake another attack. But I saw it clearly. I saw how his body turned into a physical body and resisted the air. He launched at me with the boldest and fastest movement. Everything was so exaggerated that you would think it was another fake. But I tightened my grip on the hilt of my sword. Flame breathing, esoteric art, first form. My legs pushed me off like a bullet and my body left a trail of yellow fire that lit up the darkness with hope, as if to signify the victory of light against dark. Unerring fire. It was the ultimate attack of both precision and timing. My action was so smooth and perfect it looked like water breathing instead of flame breathing to spectators. The demon could only stare and witness his own death upon the reflection of my blade. His ugly eyes met my purple eyes at the last moment and he found no mercy. Even the tiniest fiber of my muscle did not hesitate while I chopped off his head in a single swing. It was at the perfect moment when he was not intangible, the exact angle from where he wouldn't see it coming and the right distance that gave him enough time to despair but not enough room to act. Disappear, vermin. My final words, and then his body disintegrated without even hitting the ground. Flame breathing was extremely effective not only because it boosted the user's strength but it also made the Nichiren blade more effective. I sheathed my sword and I sank the last of my breath with the gentle click of the sheath. Then without another word, I continued my journey. It was already 11 days since the final selection, so I should be getting my first mission and Nichiren blade soon. And just like I thought, a swordsmith arrived in the morning. Nichiren blade, 3rd POV, your sword has arrived, young man. Get up. I was able to barely make out his words due to a mixture of drowsiness and the sudden brightness after closing my eyes for too long. I did a quick scan of where I was, under the shade of a giant tree in the Kabujitsu mountain. I remembered going to sleep under the shade after the sun had risen up. Good morning, sir. I said with a yawn while stretching my limbs. I rubbed my eyes to reduce the heaviness of my eyelids while the person in front of me released a sigh. It's afternoon, he said, and a quick peek at his attire told me that he was a Demon Slayer Corps swordsmith. He had the signature mask as well. Then good afternoon. I know you young demon slayers are working hard, but it's not healthy to live like that. A man is made to work during the day and rest at night, he said, and looking through his mask, I saw that he was on the older side. I'll keep that in mind. I said, although I was not sure if I would follow the advice. I didn't believe I would be able to sleep peacefully at night. Anyways, here is your Nichiren blade, he said, and revealed the giant long sword he was carrying behind him. I stood up and took the sword from his hand. It was just like a normal katana except it was twice as long and the hilt was also longer, allowing for a two-handed use. Never thought someone would order an odachi for demon slaying. I have only made such swords for ceremonial purposes, so I was unsure, but I really lucked out on that one, he said with a proud smile on his face. It should be deadly if you can use it correctly, odachi. A Japanese equivalent of the claymore. It was a long katana made to be wielded with both hands and was rarely used in combat due to its inefficiency. The length of the sword reached past my shoulder. I pulled out the sword from its sheath and admired how the sun reflected on the sharp blade. It's beautiful. I admired. I could see in vivid detail how well crafted the blade was. It made me take another look at the smith who was able to create such a marvelous blade. What is your name? I asked. I needed to know his name. Hattori Kanazuka, he answered with a nod. Thank you for making my blade. I said with a respectful bow. His smile widened and he waved me off. No, I was simply doing my job. I should be the one thanking you since your request gave me a new thing to work on instead of crafting the usual swords. Enough pleasantry, come on, take out the sword. You know the reason why us swordsmiths always deliver the Nichiren blade personally is because we want to see the color changing, so don't keep me waiting, he said. Right. I replied and withdrew the blade completely from its sheath. I was able to hold it in one hand with ease, and when I did, the sword started changing its color. It started from the base until the color spread to the tips. A dark purple blade. That's magnificent. Purple swords are rare, he said, and then revealed a satisfied grin behind his mask. Coming all the way here was worth it. About that, how did you find me? I asked. Well, you definitely did not make it easy, he said, and gave me the stink eye while I replied with an awkward smile. I was always moving, so it must have been quite a challenge. The bird led me to you, he said, and that was when I noticed the absence of Raven on my head. She was not on the trees nearby either. A sparrow? Shaped like one at least, he replied, and I chuckled. Raven was black and red, unlike any other sparrow. She must be busy with her job at the moment. I was supposed to have my first mission after getting my Nichiren blade. How about you show me how you plan to use the sword, young man? I was incredulous ever since I got the letter, he said, and walked back to give me some space to show him. I gave a polite smile and nodded. The reason why I specifically asked for an odachi was not only to look like a cool anime character, it also had a real practical use. One thing I noticed whenever I found myself in battle was that I was not meant to be a close combat fighter. My fighting style relied too heavily on my eyes, so I needed my opponents to always be in my field of vision. If they got too close to me, it was harder to see every part of their bodies. I would have made for an excellent marksman, but since that was not a viable option, I had to look for an alternative to increase my range. The solution I came up with was wielding a long sword. That way I could always keep my opponents at a good distance where I could see every part of their bodies. The long distance would also allow me to anticipate their moves better. All in all, it was an advantage for me. I wielded the sword in one hand. The weight was almost 3 times that of a normal Nichiren blade, but since I was stronger than most, it did not affect me much. There was also puberty. I planned to capitalize on this phase of my life to get stronger. I would develop my strength to the point that wielding an odachi would feel like wielding a normal blade. The odachi was not only heavier but longer than a katana. That usually made the wielder slower and sometimes even weaker. Not for me though. I had perfect movement which allowed me to easily wield the odachi. It reduced all the waste movements that came with using an odachi. I was also able to balance the weight of the sword perfectly, which made the heavy weight nearly irrelevant when swinging. My eyes allowed me to perfectly read my opponent and the rhythm of battles. With this, I had impeccable timing which should make up for my lack of speed. In short, I had perfect precision and timing to make up for the disadvantage that came with the odachi. And as one warrior once said, precision beats power and timing beats speed. Ready? I asked, but I did not look to see his reply. I brought my sword up above my head and I swung down at the tree that once provided me shade. I took in a gust of air to boost my body and I used all the fiber of my muscles to apply torque on my blade. I sliced the tree with deadly precision. A small whirlwind erupted from my attack and then the tree neatly slid off its trunk and fell on the ground. But that was not all, because I also cut 2 more trees which were behind the one I aimed for. My swing was so perfect that it created a wind blade that was able to cut down 2 more trees. The sound of the trees falling on the ground released a deep vibration on the ground. Wow! Hattori exclaimed and clapped his hands. I see, you have mastered the wind-breathing style. No wonder you would dare wield a longsword. Thank you, I still have much to learn, I said, finding no reason to correct him that I was not a user of wind-breathing and I did not use any breathing style in my attack for that matter. After that, I did other movements and just like I expected, I did not struggle much to wield the sword. Although it would take some to be as familiar as a normal katana. Hattori and I chatted for a short while after that. I asked him in detail how made the sword. I also inquired if it would be possible for him to make a bow and Nichiren tipped arrow for me in the future. It was a genuine idea I had for a weapon. In return, he asked me if he could look at my normal katana. I said yes and handed my katana to him. It was made of normal steel, but it was crafted by one of the greatest smiths in Japan. This is truly a work of art. Who was the swordsmith? He asked while inspecting the sword. Gassen Sadakazu. He was given the title, Imperial Artist, which is the highest title the Japanese government can give an artist. I said, if not for my kendo master's request and my victory in the nationals, I would never be able to even hold Gassen's work. They are in great demand. I said. I'm sure it is. Wow, he said while inspecting the tiniest detail of the katana. It felt like he was able to see just as much as me at the moment. If you want you can hold on to it since I no longer have use for the sword. It will just be a heavy burden in my travels. I said. Well, if you say so, he said with shining eyes. He was excited. Hattori left soon after that since he also had other deliveries and a ton of work back at home. I was left alone in the forest, so I took the time to train with my new sword again. I also strapped the sheath on my back since I was not able to the sword on my waist like a normal katana. The afternoon sun slowly started falling on the horizon and Raven returned after disappearing the entire day. She immediately perched on top of my head upon her return and she brought news from the Demon Slayer headquarters. My first mission was that I had to travel to Tokyo and investigate the recent disappearance of demons in different wards of Tokyo. I was also told that I was sent to Tokyo because I was knowledgeable of the city and its areas. I spent most of my time in Tokyo when I was young since my kendo dojo was located there. The master also said that I could take the chance to visit my home if I wished to. Talk about being a great boss. And there was also one more news. Tsukinoto. Cool. I was promoted to the rank of Tsukinoto. Apparently, they were counting all of the demons I slayed after the final selection. Raven also reported back to the headquarters, so they thought it was only fair that they promoted me to Tsukinoto since I killed 6 demons, half of them even had blood demon arts. It seemed reaching the rank of Hashira won't be too hard. A smile graced my lips as I got a new interesting idea. How about I beat Mucher's record of becoming a Hashira in the span on 2 months? Well, what an interesting challenge. My Gen Z blood boiled just from thinking about it because this was literally what we grew up with. Speedrunning. Watch me speedrun to Hashira. Sounds like the title of a YouTube video, or in this case. First mission, Seiji's POV. The journey to Tokyo was not long as it was the first time I was traveling with a destination in mind. I traveled through day and night without stopping. I also used steroid breathing constantly to increase my running speed, so in just one day, I was able to cover a distance that would have taken other people a week. I did not stop to hunt demons, nor did I stop to even eat or sleep. I just ran and ran until my body felt like it was on fire. It was almost as bad as the time I trained with Rengoku. Many would criticize my stupidity. Why was I overexerting myself when I was about to face demons when I reached Tokyo? Was I not just reducing my chance of survival? Absolutely true. But that was the difference between a speedrunner and the rest. While everyone saw stupidity, I saw the 6 days I saved. In all seriousness, I knew myself and my body the best. I would never tire myself out to the point where I was vulnerable. So when I reached the city of Tokyo, I was out of breath and tired, but that was about it. I did it, Raven. What did I tell you about not underestimating the insanity of a speedrunner? I said with a smile as I looked upon the bright streets of Tokyo in the evening. It was truly a marvel to see the bright lights, the trains, and the bustling streets in the early 20th century. The buildings were tall and they stood side by side along the busy road. It would take a bit more to impress a modern guy like me, but I could see how village boys like Tanjiro would lose their shit when they see Tokyo. I looked at my reflection in one of the windows of the building to see Raven. She still had the eyes of a dead fish in front of such a spectacle. She gave 0 fucks about the city. I shook my head in defeat and began walking along the roads with the pedestrians. I may have reached Tokyo, but I still did not know exactly where I was. I saw a bright light in the distance and just ran towards it. The first thing I should do was find out which ward I was in. Then I would head towards the ward with the missing people. The people of the city were mostly dressed in Japanese traditional clothes, but there were also plenty of people either wearing suits or dressed in Western-style clothes. Modernity was still associated with Western countries, so there were people who wanted to live and behave as Westerners. World War I did not affect Japan much, so there was a sense of prosperity in a big city like Tokyo. There were lots of foreigners in the city as well, and business were booming. I walked through the crowd and my demon slayer clothes along with the huge sword strapped on my back attracted lots of gazes. I just gave a creepy glare to the men who stared too much while I winked at the ladies. What can I say, I was an attractive bloke. Just like some ladies were appreciating my good looks, I was also appreciating theirs. Now a question, what would you do if you had X-ray vision built into your eyes and you met attractive Japanese ladies, housewives even? I would not reveal what I did as my lawyer kindly advised me to, but let's just say some bazookas were sealed under the modest yukatas. Their shapes were deformed, but they yearned to be set free. But bazookas were not the only weapon of destruction, because while some lacked bazookas, they had cake. Huge cake. Jiggling cake that was perfectly cut in the middle, vanilla flavor. But could you believe that that was not the end of it? Some had long flowing legs. Few of them had wide hips and small waist, perfect love handles. And one of them had 7 hearts and 5 brains. Wait. Pause. My body froze and I became a statue. All bodily functions ceased to work as they stilled for a moment. My jolly mood completely vanished and the rest of the world faded away as my eyes remained stuck on her. She was a stunning beauty on the outside, but I was unfortunate enough to be able to see through the ugliness inside of her. No, it's not her. Him. His outer flesh was a mere disguise he put on. Underneath that lay the most cursed being in this world. The source of all my hatred. My breath hitched as I struggled to even breathe in his presence. There was something big, that was swelling endlessly in my chest. Rage and bitter hate. They nearly took over my body and chopped off the head of that stain on the earth. It took everything in my power to stop. Doing nothing had never been so hard. I stood still as he walked towards me and right past me. I will kill you, the sentence managed to slip out of my lips although I was unaware of it. It was only when she turned around to glare me in the eye did I realize I had blurted the sentence out. He knew that I was a demon slayer from my outfit and he knew what I meant with that word. He realized I knew what he was. Then a great pressure decided upon my shoulder. Killing intent so thick I could taste blood in my mouth assaulted my senses. My body shook. It was the same feeling I got that night. He was so much stronger than me it hurts to even exist in front of him. My eyes saw how his nails extended into a claw and he swiped at me. My body moved to dodge the attack and it was successful. It was the fastest movement I had ever witnessed even though it was a causal swing of his hands. But I could read him. He seemed to be caught off guard by my action as his feminine features morphed into something sinister. Yet we were in the middle of the street so he decided to leave me alone for now. He walked away. I remained in my place, my heart was a beating mess of fear and anger, panic and hatred. My body was covered in sweat at the encounter. Fuck. 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 I grabbed the skin of my chest and continued walking again. It was a short yet valuable encounter for me. It opened my eyes to how strong I still needed to get. I finally fell down and vomited on the ground. My heart pounded in my chest and my vision got blurry. What was happening? It was an anxiety attack, but why? Was it because meeting him reminded me of that night? Even so, why was I on the ground and writhing like a worm? Though I had grown past this, I thought I had become stronger. No, no, no. The images started appearing in my mind. I closed my eyes to stop but I couldn't stop seeing them. I will kill him. I will kill him. I swear. I swear. Musen Kibutsuji. Seiji's POV, holy fucking shit. If I got a penny for every time a demon came into my life and made me want to roll over and die, I would have too. It's not much but fucking hell why'd it happen twice? What were the chances that in my very first mission as a demon slayer, I would encounter the literal demon king? The chances were so slim that it was a clear indication of my remarkable fate in this world. For real, this was the type of shit experienced only by the main characters. Or the side character who would soon die to show just how scary and brutal the main villain was. Hopefully, I was neither and I haven't realized the third option yet. The Asakusa ward of Tokyo was the place I found myself in. It was also the place where the Demon King was hiding in plain sight, blending in with the thousands upon thousands of humans living here. I'd assumed it must be quite easy to do so since he could shapeshift on command. Heck, he was in his women form when I met him, but I was sure he would have changed that form by now. I quickly went to the direction opposite to where Musen went and I also prepared myself to leave the city. Honestly, fuck the mission. The culprit behind the missing people was obviously Walmart Michael Jackson here and I was like, 5 years and 10 more training arcs away from being at his level. So I decided to leave the city as soon as possible, which was about the easiest decision I made in my life. I put a hand on my heart and felt my heartbeat calming down. It was embarrassing to say, but his simple presence reminded me of the most traumatizing event that happened in my life. I completely lost my cool because of that, which was totally not cool. I knew I had serious unresolved issues from both lives, but I did not like confronting them. Instead, I found a loophole of ignoring all of those problems or traumas, and I learned that if ignored them long enough, most wounds heal with time. This one would too. When I am the strongest demon slayer and when I drive the demons to extinction, all of these traumas will be solved. Like I said, I just need time. Time will heal me. Watch where you are going, idiot. I saw a man on the train scream at me as I barely crossed the rail. I wanted to scream back that I couldn't help it, I was running for my literally life right now, but I chose to keep my mouth shut and continue to leave the city. Third POV, Muzan Kibutsuji walked into an alley and quickly changed his form into that of a man. He put a hand on his face while grinding his teeth in anger. He was found out. He thought he had hidden perfectly, but that boy was able to tell instantly that he was a demon. How the boy did it, he did not know. But he knew he needed to remove him before he revealed the information. He snapped his finger and immediately, two of HS loyal servants appeared kneeling beside him. They were high-ranking demons he kept around them to run errands, whether that be killing people or bringing him humans. They were not as strong as the 12 demon moons, but together, they had the potential to be one. There is a demon slayer in the city, purple hair and eyes. He is a lower-ranking demon slayer, so quickly dispatch him and bring me his head. He said, and immediately, two demon disappeared to complete their mission. It was not often that Their Lord gave them important missions like this, so the two demons, Susamaru and Yahaba, ran on top of the building to look for Their prey. It did not take them long to find Their target. In fact, Yahaba did not even have to use his eyes to track Their prey. Watch where you are going, idiot. They heard a scream, and when they looked towards it, they saw their target, a demon slayer with purple hair. He was running out of the city, he was trying to escape them. Not a chance. Hey Yahaba, do you think we will be able to become 12 Kakezuki after this? Sasamaru asked in a giddy tone. She was too obsessed with being one of the 12 Kazuki that she was ready to do anything. She even went as far as calling herself one due to her obsession. Maybe, but I know the Lord will reward us with his blood if we complete this mission, said Yahaba. They both had smiles on their faces as they followed the demon slayer outside of the city. They planned on attacking him then. And so they walked to their deaths. Seiji's POV, I was being followed. Which was a lot creepier than it sounds. Especially when it was a bird on top of your head who told you that you were being followed. At first, I thought it was Muzan, but then she told me that they were two demons, a girl and a boy. Relief instantly washed over me as I realized it was not the demon lord. Instead of coming after me himself, he had sent two of his underlings to deal with me. And from the description, I think I know exactly who they were. Susamaru and Yahaba. They were one of the earliest demons Tanjiro encountered in the series. If I remember correctly, they were one of the lower moons. But I was not too worried since they were pretty weak, being killed by Tanjiro before he even acquired sun breathing. If I had to rate my current straight, I would put myself in the same rank as a weak Hashira. I was at the level of strength where I was not really afraid of the lower moons. So when I finally reached far enough from the city, I stopped in my tracks. I slowly pulled out the sword on my back and then I turned around to gaze at the two demons who were following me. Weak. The word left my mouth unintentionally. Just from looking at them, I could tell that they were nowhere near the level of a lower moon. Maybe they were even weaker than when Tanjiro met them. But it was not a bad thing. At least with them here, I could have an excuse for claiming that the mission given to me was indeed accomplished. They remained on top of a tree, their faces were in the shape of confusion. They wondered how I could see them in the darkness and whether I really noticed them or I was just bluffing. Nevertheless, after a minute, a temari ball shot towards me and I smiled. It was a good time to vent out all of the shitty emotions I just went through. Who knows, this could be like therapy. Let's talk. First mission accomplished, Seiji's POV, let's talk. I started the conversation. I vent my frustration, anger and hatred with my first words. It was a violent, direct and bold way to start a sentence. My body sliced through the air that was resisting my speed and then I swung my sword horizontally. The sharp sound of metal slicing wood rang out in the quietness of the night before a hurricane roared. 7 trees were cut down in an instant, including the tree where the demons were on. My eyes glowed purple in the darkness as I carefully observed Thea reply to my daring action. The demon boy, Yahaba, was calm and collected. He activated his demon art and a red arrow carried him away as the tree collapsed. On the other hand, the demon girl, Susumaru, was easy to anger. Her eyebrows knitted with rage and she conjured a temari ball in her hand. She threw the ball at me while she was falling. She was the type to disregard her own safety if it meant she could hurt her enemies. It was a very typical trait for demons who had great regenerative abilities, so it did not surprise me. The temari ball shot at me with the speed of a bullet, which sounds scary, I know, but I dodged the ball with an effortless tilt of my head. There was no difference between the speed of a bullet and a crawling baby in front of my eyes. I allowed the demons to land on the ground while I took that time to examine them more closely. In that short instance, I was able to discern Their blood demon art. It might have taken longer if I did not know Their abilities before, but since I watched Demon Slayer in my past life, it was simply a confirmation more than a real analysis. Susumaru, the demon girl, can conjure many temari balls which she could then throw and kick towards her enemy at the speed of a bullet. Her balls were capable of penetrating cement walls. Yahaba, the demon boy, has eyes on the plan of his hands. These eyes are extremely sharp and capable of tracking even footprints. His blood demon arts allows him to conjure invisible red arrows which interfere with the vector of matters. The object affected by the arrow is pulled to the direction of the arrows. I'll have your head for that, Susumaru said with an angry face. But I noticed that, although she was short-tempered, she was doing it a little too much. I will rip out your heart and feast on it, she said with a creepy grin and veins popping out of her forehead. She was trying a little too much. A distraction then, I thought to myself, and gave a side eye to Yahaba, who was sneaking away before he hid behind a tree. They must have done this a lot because they were experts in it, too bad I caught on quickly. But then again, I could see through trees, so there was no hiding from my sight. If I remember correctly, Susumaru and Yabe worked extremely well together. Yahaba would control the temari balls of Susumaru to create projectiles akin to a honing missile. The combination of Their 2 blood demon arts made them quite a tricky adversary. Yahaba was the weaker physically and acted as a support of Susumaru. That was why he is immediately. Susumaru conjured temari balls out of thin air with a huge, nasty smile on her face. She pulled her arms back and they blurred as the balls shot at me. But this time it was different. The balls had invisible arrows guiding them. It was the blood demon art of Yahaba, and with it, the balls swerved and moved with impossible angles. Boom, the sound barrier was broken. It seemed the arrows increased the power behind them as well. How neat. Luckily, the invisible arrows were not invisible to my eyes. Instead, they act as an obvious indicator of where the balls are going to hit. Prediction had never been easier. Flame breathing, 3rd form. Blazing universe. Inferno wrapped around my blade and I felt my body heat up to an unnatural degree. My breath turned into flames and I leapt into the air. The temari balls followed me, but with a twirl of my blade, they were sliced in half. The temari balls were part of the demon, so they disintegrated upon making contact with my blade. Then I crashed beside the enemy with wide eyes. Susumaru was clearly surprised that I was not caught off guard by the honing attack like most people. My blade created a burst of hot air that sent a shockwave through the surroundings. Everything was lit up in golden fury as my blade bit into her body. I cut diagonally across her chest. Her body could not even put up resistance to my blade, it was like carving a cake. The demon girl released a shriek that would surely burst my eardrum if I was not already deaf. I smiled and jumped back as 12 invisible red arrows came at me with brilliant speed. They were quick, and although they had no piercing power, they could drag me around like a rag doll if they catch me. So I twirled my long sword to create a protective barrier. The flames took the form of a flower and I deflected every incoming arrows with ease. Flame breathing, fourth form. Blooming flame undulation. Flame breathing was known to be an aggressive fighting style that required explosive strength and inhumane stamina to burn forever. But the fourth form was created solely for defensive purposes. I flicked my sword to clean the blood off and I watched as Susumaru healed herself. I observed her body closely as her body healed, and not just that, she grew 4 more arms from the side of her torso. "I will burst your head for that," she screamed at me. I brought up my sword and a smile tugged my lips. The enemy spoke. 6 Temari balls with an inbuilt aimbot in the form of arrows rushed at me at the speed of sound. It was surely a sight to behold. Anyone else might have shat their pants. Their action was desperate and angry. They took me as a weak opponent at first, but now they realized they were the ones who should be scared. They were giving everything they had. I could tell at a glance that they were inexperienced. It was probably not long ago that they turned into demons. They had solid teamwork and they found a genius way to work together, but that was it. They didn't really know how to fight, nor the dangers that came along with it. I'd assumed that all of the opponents they faced till now were too busy dealing with their combine's attacks, so they were never confronted head-on. Multiple battles such as that had given them false confidence. My arm and sword became one and they blurred into multiple afterimages. I focused on my breath to maintain deep concentration and maximum reflex. My eyes and my mind were quick, it was just my body that had to catch up. 6 deadly balls bounced and swerved in a way that defied physics. Yet their objective was the same: put a hole in me. But under the shocked gazes of the enemy, I deflected the incoming projectiles with ease. My arm completely disappeared with rapid movements as I blocked every attack coming at me. I also used the shiny, reflective side of my sword to look behind me, so I was able to block all attacks that came from every angle. I liked the expression on their faces while looking at the scene I was painting. Despair. Because no matter how angry they were, no matter how frustrated they were, and no matter how much they desired strength, I was always angrier, I was always more frustrated, and my thirst for power was far greater. I just learned how to control them. I mold them into a blade that cuts down demons unfortunate enough to encounter me. I am Malnia, Blade of Miquella, and I have never known defeat. I said with an amused smile on my face while I slowly walked towards Susumaru. The sound of a blade moving at incredible speed in the air and the clanging sound of Temari balls getting deflected rang through the surroundings. Sparks surrounded me. What are you doing? She screamed. Can't you see? I'm entertaining myself because truthfully, your strength is. My legs propelled me forward faster than sound. Boring. In an instant, I was behind her and the deed was already done by then. Susumaru's head slid off her neck and I crushed her head with the soles of my shoe. Her body disintegrated after a few seconds. I disappeared again right after. My movement was untrackable by the naked eye. Years of training and perfect movement allowed me to achieve feats of incredible speed. You have good eyes, I said from behind Yahaba. He was sitting on top of a tree, trying to hide from me. Yahaba leapt off the tree and put his hands forward. His palms had eyes and they blinked. Then multiple arrows shoot towards me. Let's see who has better eyes, I said, and easily cut through the invisible arrows. He was telling me everything, his strategies, his fears, and even things he had not realized yet. I spy with my little eyes, something red, I said, lunging towards my left and swinging my sword. I was just in time to catch Yahaba, who with the help of his arrows was trying to fly away from me. He was trying to escape to the city because he knew I wouldn't return. But alas, he could not escape me. His body was bisected at his waist. While his lower body continued flying towards the city, his upper body fell to the forest floor. Blood splurted out, painting his vision red. He started regenerating his legs, and while he was trying to push himself back up, I cleanly cut off his head while landing. He died like an animal in a sacrificial ritual. Well, that was therapeutic. Don't you agree, Raven? I asked her while she flew towards me and perched on top of my head. That is mission accomplished, I said with a smile, watching Yahaba disintegrate to ash. Now let's get the fuck away from Tokyo and continue our speedrunning elsewhere. I said, and I continued my journey. I had accomplished my first mission. But there was no rest for a speedrunner. In less than 2 months, I had to be a Hashira. And I won't accept anything less.